Okay, I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are tracing the fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying evolution of human weaponry. We're going to track exactly how weapons changed over time, taking a journey from the Stone Age all the way to the Cold War. Let's just dive right in.
So it really all comes down to this one provocative question. How on earth did we go from swinging heavy rocks to holding the power to literally vaporize the planet? Well, the answer lies in one simple, continuous pursuit throughout human history, and that is the escalating distance between the killer and the target.
As we walk through our timeline today, the Stone Age, Bronze Age, Middle Ages, Gunpowder Era, the 20th century, and finally the Cold War, you're going to see how humanity continuously innovated for one primary reason: to kill from further and further away.
Section 1. The birth of distance. You know, early humans realized very quickly that getting up close and personal to an enemy, or even a wild animal, was incredibly dangerous. We've got the earliest tools, the stone club and the hand axe. Experimental archaeology has actually shown that with just one good swing, these stone weapons easily fracture synthetic bone. I mean, they were brutal. But they had a massive limitation, right? You have to be right next to your target. Then, someone figured out the spear, and this completely revolutionized warfare and hunting because it gave fighters the absolute gift of range. You could thrust it or you could throw it. It gave you options. Suddenly, the physically smaller or outnumbered person actually had a fighting chance.
Let's move to the Bronze Age and see how this builds. Around 3300 BC, metalworking emerges and totally upgrades these existing categories. Look at these. We get the composite bow, which was laminated with wood, horn, and sinew, launching arrows with just unprecedented power. We see the Egyptian khopesh, this brilliant bronze curved sword designed specifically to hook around an enemy's shield, and the sling, a seemingly simple tool that could actually hurl a solid lead ball several hundred feet with lethal force.
Now, to truly understand the sheer scale of warfare in this era, just look at this number: 5,000 to 6,000. That is the estimated number of fast-moving chariots that clashed at the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BC between the Hittites and the Egyptians. These chariots were essentially massive mobile platforms for archers and spearmen. It completely changed the entire logic of how armies were built. Section 2. The medieval arms race.
So forget the romantic myths of chivalry you see in the movies. This era was a brutal, mechanical arms race between heavy armor and the weapons built to pierce it. At the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, we see the devastating impact of distance. You have these heavily armored French knights expecting a close-up melee fight, going right up against the English longbow, and these bows were massive, 6 to 7 feet tall, draw weights up to 180 pounds, firing at a 300-yard range. The heavily outnumbered English longbowmen basically brought down such a massive volume of arrows that the French advance collapsed before the hand-to-hand combat even truly started. Distance literally defeated armor.
But what about when the enemy just hid behind stone walls? Well, siege warfare brought its own incredible scale: 190 pounds. That's the weight of a stone that a medieval counterweight trebuchet could hurl up to 900 feet, just crushing castle fortifications. Absolutely no wall was truly safe if the enemy outside had the right machinery. And while we're still in the Middle Ages, we absolutely have to talk about one of the most terrifying anomalies of naval warfare: Greek fire. This was a highly guarded Byzantine liquid-based incendiary weapon. What made it so completely horrific was that it ignited on contact and continuously burned even on top of the water, like it wouldn't go out. Its petroleum-like formula was such a tightly kept state secret that, to this day, its exact composition actually remains lost to history.
The psychological terror this stuff inflicted was just immense, because water, the most obvious counter to fire, especially when you're out on a ship, was completely useless against it. As this striking observation notes, the mere appearance of these siphon ships resulted in crews abandoning their vessels rather than facing it. It absolutely broke enemy morale before a fight even happened.
Section 3. Gunpowder rewrites the rules.
Eventually, everything we've talked about so far was rendered instantly obsolete. Let's walk through this rapid escalation of gunpowder. It starts over in China with the Fire Lance, which is essentially a 10-foot range flamethrower/shotgun hybrid attached to a spear. Crude, sure, but terrifying. Then, by the 14th century, we see massive metal-barreled cannons, or bombards, firing solid iron balls over a mile. Think about that for a second. Overnight, centuries of relying on thick stone castles became a joke. They were totally vulnerable. And finally, we get handheld muskets firing volleys at 100 meters. The highly trained, lifelong archer suddenly replaced by mass formations of musketeers.
I want to pause here for a second because this is a really crucial sociological shift. Warfare was no longer about individual physical prowess or a lifetime of practicing a skill. Power fully shifted to the centralized state. It was now entirely about industrial capacity. Who could manufacture, supply, and coordinate destruction at scale.
Section 4. The industrialization of war.
That massive push for industrialization takes us right into the 20th century. And from World War I onward, the pace of technological death accelerates terrifyingly fast. Broad eras just disappear, and individual conflicts begin to define the rapid changes in weaponry. Take a look at this data. 58% of British casualties on the Western Front were caused by artillery shell fire. Men who grew up in a world of cavalry charges found themselves in this industrialized slaughterhouse, where an artillery shell could kill you from 2 miles away without a single second of warning.
The mechanization of death escalated rapidly. You had the Vickers machine gun firing 600 rounds a minute from over 3 miles away, locking the whole war into a bloody stalemate. You had mustard gas, introduced in 1917, causing horrific burns to the lungs and skin, completely violating basic rules of human combat. And then, as we go into World War II, we see strategic bombing. Distance no longer guaranteed any safety from the front lines, because total war meant civilian factories and housing were now considered legitimate targets.
Air power essentially erased the concept of a traditional battlefield. This culminated in events like the firebombing of Tokyo in March 1945. It created a massive firestorm, ending the lives of 100,000 people and destroying a quarter of a densely populated city. It stands as the deadliest conventional air raid in human history.
And then, modern warfare reached a total breaking point. In August 1945, the atomic shift occurred. A roughly 15-kiloton bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, causing around 80,000 instant fatalities, with Nagasaki following just 3 days later. Across both cities, an estimated 150,000 to 250,000 total lives were ended. We had reached a point in our timeline where one single weapon, dropped from the sky, could erase an entire city in a flash.
Section 5. The ultimate nuclear deterrent. So, during the Cold War, the two global superpowers took the unprecedented horror of Hiroshima and spent decades trying to exponentially multiply it. You have the 15-kiloton yield of the Hiroshima bomb, compared to the 1961 Soviet Tsar Bomba coming in at roughly 50,000 kilotons. The Tsar Bomba was thousands of times more powerful. Actually, its shockwaves circled the Earth 3 times over. It was a staggering, terrifying demonstration of what these states were now capable of building.
And distance, our main theme for this whole explainer, reached its absolute planetary limit. With submarines hiding deep in the oceans and intercontinental ballistic missiles ready to launch at a moment's notice, thermonuclear warheads could strike literally anywhere on Earth in about 30 minutes. Attempting any kind of preemptive defense, it became completely impossible.
So, we arrived at this chilling concept, deterrence. Mutually assured destruction became the new defining logic of global survival. It was a strategy where both sides made sure they possessed enough weapons to survive a first strike, just so they could turn around and completely destroy the aggressor in return.
Which leaves us with this final haunting irony. As we look back at how weapons changed over time, from that very first hand axe all the way to a thermonuclear warhead, is the logic of deterrence, possessing weapons capable of ending the world, truly the only thing keeping it safe? It's an incredible thing to ponder when you realize just how far we've come from swinging a stone club. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.